Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really important in healthcare, diabetic foot ulcers, DFUs as they're known.
Yeah, they're a huge challenge. If you know anyone with diabetes, these ulcers are a serious risk.
Absolutely. We're talking serious illness, high healthcare costs, and a much higher risk of amputation, unfortunately.
And the numbers are quite stark, aren't they? Something like a third of people with diabetes will get one.
That's right, around 34%. It's a massive number, which brings us to how they're usually assessed.
Traditionally, it's been visual examination, mostly.
Exactly. A doctor or nurse looks at the wound, but, well, that has its limits, doesn't it?
It does. It can be subjective, depending on who's looking.
And it takes time. Plus, things like lighting, different skin tones, they can complicate things.
Consistency is tough, and catching those very early, subtle ulcers is a real challenge with just the naked eye.
So there's definitely a need for tools that are more objective, more reliable.
Agreed. And that's where our main topic for today comes in this new AI approach. It's called ADZUS.
ADZUS. Okay. That's Attention Diffusion Zero-Shot Unsupervised System.
You got it. Quite a name. But the concept behind it is what's really fascinating.
So how is this AI different? Usually medical AI needs tons of training data, right? Labeled images.
That's the key difference here. ADZUS is designed to segment or outline these wounds without needing that specific labeled training data.
Without labeled data?
Yeah, it uses something called zero-shot learning.
Zero-shot. Okay, that sounds... Well, how does that even work? How can it recognize a DFU if it hasn't been explicitly shown thousands of labeled DFU images?
It's clever. It essentially leverages the power of large-scale diffusion models.
Yeah.
The kind of AI that's behind some of those, incredible image generation tools.
Ah, okay. Like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, those types of models.
Exactly. Those models learn a massive amount about visual patterns from the billions of images they're trained on. ADZUS taps into the internal workings of these models, specifically something called self-attention mechanism.
Self-attention, right. That's how the AI figures out which parts of an image are related.
Precisely. The researchers figured that even though these models were trained on general images, cats, dogs, landscapes, whatever they've learned, fundamental visual concepts that might surprisingly apply to medical images too.
So the AI might already have a sort of built-in understanding of textures, boundaries, anomalies, things that could correspond to a wound, even if it doesn't know the word wound.
That's the core idea. It can recognize and group pixels that are visually similar, like the different tissues within and around an ulcer.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. It's leveraging this vast pre-existing visual knowledge, but you also mentioned it's text-guided. How does text fit in?
Ah, yes, that's another layer. ADZUS doesn't just look at the image. It can also incorporate text descriptions.
Like what kind of descriptions?
The clinician could provide a prompt, maybe describing the wound. Something like ulcer with surrounding redness or wound showing necrotic tissue.
And that text, it helps the AI focus.
Exactly. It guides the AI's attention mechanisms, making the segmentation potentially more accurate and more clinically relevant. It's like giving the AI specific instructions on what features to pay closer attention to.
Got it. So our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack how ADZUS manages this zero-shot segmentation, what the benefits could be, and I guess how well it actually performs compared to the older methods.
Right. And especially exploring this whole zero-shot concept, it can be huge for medical imaging, where getting large amounts of perfectly labeled data is often a major bottleneck.
The big question then, can an AI really identify these specific medical features accurately just based on general knowledge and a text prompt?
The initial research points to a really promising yes.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does ADZUS actually do it? You mentioned attention mechanisms.
Okay, so think about how these big AI models process an image. They create internal maps showing where the AI is focusing its attention. Pixels that belong to the same object tend to have strong connections in these attention maps.
So the AI notices that pixels in the wound area are strongly related to each other, more so than to pixels in the surrounding healthy skin.
Exactly. And what's more, the researchers noticed that these relationships, these attention patterns, remain consistent even when looking at the attention maps generated at different levels of detail within the AI model.
Ah, so whether the AI is looking at the bigger picture or zooming in on details, the wound area still lights up consistently in its attention.
That's the observation. It suggests a robust signal for identifying objects.
So ADZUS takes these attention signals. How does it translate that into an outline? Is it a multi-step thing?
It is. They describe a three-step process. First is attention aggregation. The underlying model generates multiple attention maps at different scales or layers. ADZUS collects these.
Kind of like getting different perspectives.
Sort of, yeah. It brings them all to a common resolution and then combines the attention information for each pixel. So you get a richer, multi-layered view of the attention landscape.
Okay, aggregates the attention signals. Step 1, what's next?
Step 2 is iterative merging. This combined map shows potential areas of interest. The algorithm then smartly selects some starting points, or seeds, and starts grouping nearby pixels that have very similar attention characteristics.
So it's building up regions based on similarity in attention.
Right. It iteratively merges these regions, gradually building up larger segments that hopefully correspond to distinct objects, like the wound itself. It's trying to find coherent clusters in that attention data.
Makes sense. Grouping similar attention patterns. And the final step.
Step 3 is non-maximum suppression. After the merging, you might still have some slightly overlapping potential outlines for the wound. This step cleans things up.
How so?
It basically looks at any overlapping proposals and picks the strongest or most confident one for each pixel, suppressing the weaker overlapping ones. This results in a single, clear boundary for the segmented region.
So aggregate attention, merge similar regions iteratively, then clean up overlaps.
That's the core process. And remember, initially, this just identifies regions based on visual patterns. The text guidance then helps interpret what those regions likely represent.
It's a really neat pipeline, using the inherent structure discovered by the big model and refining it. So the million-dollar question, did it actually work? What were the results?
This is where it gets really compelling. They tested it on 2 main datasets. One was a public dataset of various chronic wounds, not just DFUs.
Okay.
On that dataset, ADZUS achieved an IOU intersection over union, a common segmentation metric of 86.68%. and a precision of 94.69%.
Just so everyone's clear, IOU basically measures the overlap between the AI's prediction and the true wound area. Higher is better. And precision measures how much of what the AI called wound actually was wound. Those numbers sound pretty good.
They're very good, but here's the kicker. They compared it to established supervised models specifically trained on labeled wound images.
Ah, the traditional approach. How did ADZUS stack up?
It actually outperformed a well-regarded supervised model called FUSegNet. FUSegNet got an IOU of 86.4D% and precision of 94.4D%.
Wait, so the zero-shot model, the one not trained on wound labels, did slightly better than the one that was?
That's what they found on this data set. It's quite surprising, isn't it?
That's really surprising. A huge validation for the zero-shot idea. What about the second data set? You said there was another one.
Yes, they also tested it on their own, smaller data set of 40 DFU images. Here, they used a slightly different metric, the Dice Similarity Coefficient, or DSC, another common measure of overlap.
And the result there?
ADZUS achieved a median DSC of 75%.
Okay, 75%. How did the supervised model, FUSegNet, do on that specific DFU set?
Significantly worse, actually. FUSegNet only managed a median DSC of 45% on that data set.
Wow. So ADZUS had a 30-point advantage on that DFU-specific set. That's not a small difference.
Not at all. It really suggests this approach is quite robust, not just a fluke on one data set. And again, achieving this without task-specific training data is the remarkable part.
It truly points to that idea we discussed, that these foundational AI models have somehow learned visual concepts relevant even to specialized medical images through their broad training.
Absolutely. And the researchers were careful too. They checked if maybe, by chance, images similar to their test sets were hiding in the massive data set used to train the original diffusion model.
Ah, to make sure it wasn't accidentally cheating?
Exactly. They used a tool called LAION5B search and confirmed their test images, or very close lookalikes, weren't part of the pre-training data.
That strengthens the zero-shot claim considerably. It really seems to be generalizing its knowledge. Okay, let's circle back to the text guidance. How does that change the output in practice?
It adds a layer of control and specificity for that text. ADZUS might just outline the most prominent visually distinct region, but add text.
Like show me the area of infection, or maybe something more descriptive.
Precisely. If you prompt it with, say, deep ulcer boundary, it will focus on the overall edge. But if you use a prompt like highlight red granular tissue, it might refine the segmentation to focus specifically on areas that visually match that description within the wound bed.
So clinicians could use different prompts to interrogate the wound image, maybe differentiate between slough and granulation tissue, or inflamed versus infected areas, just by changing the text prompt.
That's the potential. It moves beyond just getting an outline to getting a targeted outline based on clinical interest. It offers flexibility.
That adaptability could be incredibly useful for tracking healing or assessing different tissue types without needing multiple specialized AI models.
It certainly opens up possibilities for more nuanced analysis.
This sounds revolutionary almost, but are there downsides? What are the current limitations?
Well, like many of these large diffusion models, inference, actually running the model to get a result, can be computationally expensive.
Meaning it takes time and processing power.
Yes. It might not be instant, which could be a factor in, say, a busy clinic setting. It's likely slower than some simpler, specialized AI models.
Okay, computation cost. Anything else?
And while the zero-shot performance is impressive, for highly diverse or very specific clinical applications, some level of fine-tuning might still be beneficial to maximize accuracy across all possible variations in image quality or wound types.
Understandable, like adapting it for different cameras or less common wound presentations seems like typical next steps for development.
Exactly. These are areas for ongoing research.
Okay, so let's quickly recap this deep dive. We looked at ADZUS, this novel AI for DFU segmentation.
Right. Its key innovation is using self-attention from large diffusion models in a zero-shot way. No need for labeled wound training data.
And it involves that three-step process: attention aggregation, iterative merging, and non-maximum suppression to get the final outline.
Plus the text guidance aspect, allowing descriptive prompts to refine the segmentation.
And the results were pretty striking, outperforming supervised models on some key metrics, like achieving an IOU over 86% and precision near 95% on one dataset.
And a median DSE of 75% on a DFU-specific set, much higher than the 45% for the supervised comparison model FUSegNet on that same set.
The real wow factor for me remains that an AI, without specific DFU training, can achieve this. It implies a deeper visual understanding within these models than maybe we anticipated.
And verifying that the test images weren't in the pre-training data really underscores that zero-shot capability.
The text guidance adds that clinical flexibility, moving beyond a simple outline to targeted analysis based on prompts.
Definitely a key advantage for potential clinical use.
Acknowledging, of course, the current hurdles like processing time and potential need for fine-tuning down the line.
Yes, practical considerations for real-world deployment.
So the provocative thought to leave you, our listener, with is this. If AI can achieve this level of understanding in medical imaging without explicit labels for that specific task, where else could this apply?
Think about other diagnostic challenges, maybe in radiology, pathology, dermatology. Could zero-shot or few-shot learning, guided perhaps by text or other inputs, unlock insights where labeled data is scarce?
And how might this evolve? Could we see AI integrating image analysis with, say, electronic health records or other patient data for even more personalized assessments, all potentially learned with less direct supervision?
It certainly pushes the boundaries of how we think AI can learn and contribute in complex fields like medicine. A fascinating future to contemplate.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.